This segment is sponsored by Realtor.com. For the first time in years, homebuyers may finally have the upper hand. With asking prices falling, inventory growing, and more markets shifting in buyers' favor, the housing market is entering a new phase. But every local market is different, of course. So here with a look at the market in our area is Hannah Jones, senior economist at Realtor.com. Hi, Hannah. Great to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Hannah, what has changed in the housing market that's giving buyers more leverage?
So, a lot's changed over the last few years. We all remember that pandemic period where it felt like homes sold so quickly, prices only climbed, and buyers could barely, get a foothold before a home was off the market. Well, now we see that buyer demand is a little bit lower, inventory is a little bit higher, which means that buyers have a lot more flexibility. They have a lot more power in today's housing market. We know that sellers are now, instead of listing high and cutting prices later, they are now also coming in at prices that are more reasonable and closer to what buyers are looking for. But of course, like you said, it does vary a lot depending on where you are in the country.
Yeah, I understand there's something called the Realtor.com market clock. So what do we need to know about that?
So the Realtor.com Market Clock is a new simple tool that we released that helps you understand as a buyer, as a seller, as anyone in the housing market, where your market falls on the spectrum from a buyer's market to a seller's market. So it's a clock face, and at 12 o'clock you have a buyer's or a seller's market. At 6 o'clock you have a buyer's market, and 3 and 9 are both balanced markets. And so depending on where you fall based on your market pace, your pricing pressure, and also the time on market, you can understand if your market is buyer leaning or seller leaning and what that means for you.
Wow, that sounds like a great new tool. All right, but Hannah, we want to know, how are things shaping up in our local market?
So in your market in Washington, D.C., it is at 2 o'clock, which would be a balanced market. So that's on the early side of a balanced market, meaning you're coming out of that seller environment and you're entering a little bit more balance, which means that buyers have a little bit more power than they once did. But sellers are likely still seeing, healthy demand for homes. And so what that means is that, sellers, as long as they're pricing well, can, find a buyer, and that buyers are going to have a few more options.
All right, well, based on that, do you have advice for buyers and sellers for the summer?
Yeah, we always advise, arm yourself with information, know what's going on in your local market, and then move ahead accordingly. So for a buyer, that would mean, know what you can expect in terms of prices, what you're looking for, and also what your budget might be based on, what you're willing to put down and where mortgage rates are. And then for sellers, price according to what is realistic in your area. So, if you price too high, you risk not getting a lot of buyer attention and having to reduce prices later. However, if you price well and you price competitively, you could see, multiple offers or good, healthy buyer demand.
A lot to think about and a lot of great advice. Thank you so much. Where can we go for more resources and to learn more about the market clock?
Yeah, you can learn more about the market clock, use the tool, and read the methodology at realtor.com/market clock.
All right. Thanks so much, Hannah.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, you can find out more by heading to realtor.com/market clock.